Hello, it's Mrs. Mason here reading chapter 7 and I'm the school librarian and I'm looking forward to meeting you all in September. I sat on the deck and watched as Grandad steered out along the river channel between the sandbanks. I saw two of the black and white birds I'd seen before with the orange beaks and feet. "They're oyster catchers," said Grandad. And then he pointed to a brown bird with long red legs and a long beak. It was poking in the mud, and that's a red shank. I just sat and watched the marsh and fields pass by as we headed out towards the sea. The thrum of the engine and the wheeling gulls calling above us were the only sounds. As we neared the opening to the sea, Grandad slowed the boat and stood up, his hand over his eyes to shade against the sun. "It's fine today," he said. "The waves aren't that big." He pointed out to sea. "You see the swell rises and gets bigger here? It's because there's a sandbar, a ridge of sand beneath the sea. It can be tricky getting out and in." Grandad waited for a lull in the bigger waves and then steered out into the sea. The little boat rose and dipped over the waves, rolling in from the Atlantic, and then we were out in calmer water. "There's a little cove we'll anchor in," said Grandad. He pointed to the ship's wheel. "Here, you have a go at steering," he said, standing back from the wheel. "Grandad," I said, "I don't know what to do." "Have a go," Grandad laughed. "This is the throttle. Push it forwards to go faster, backwards to slow down, and into this position for neutral." He pointed to a headland. "We want to go to a small bay on the other side of that." And with that, he went down into the cabin, stretched out on the bench, and closed his eyes. "Grandad," I said, "I can't drive a boat." Grandad opened one eye. "Wake me when we get there." I held on to the ship's wheel and stared ahead, almost too scared to move. I turned the wheel towards the headland and the boat swung too much the other way. When I turned the wheel again, it lurched back too far. I thought Grandad would shout at me, but his eyes were still closed. I tried again and got the hang of steering. Then I tried to push the throttle forwards and the nose of the boat lifted a little out of the water. A white frothy wake trailed behind us. I was concentrating so hard on steering that I didn't notice something rise up beside the boat. A sleek curve that leapt beside me. Another one leapt out of the water, spinning in the air before it crashed back into the water. "Dolphins!" I yelled. "Grandad, dolphins!" Grandad was up like a shot. He took the wheel so that I could watch them. One looked me right in the eye, and I had the feeling it wanted to know about me just as much as I wanted to know about it. I couldn't believe I was seeing real dolphins. "We're lucky," said Grandad. "The bottlenose dolphins can be a bit shy." Grandad steered us to the other side of the headland, where he dropped an anchor in the calm water. He put bait on the hook of his fishing rod and cast the line out into the sea. Then he poured himself a cup of coffee and passed a cola to me and sat back. "What do we do now?" I asked. Grandad looked at me. "We eat and sit," he said, "or have a little snooze, or a think. Up to you. I'm going to read my book." "OK," I said. I'd never sat and did nothing without the TV on and my Xbox to play with. I took my sandwiches, walked to the front of the deck and sat down with my legs over the side. I lay back and looked up at the sky. I took a deep breath in and out, in and out. It was such a big sky. I hadn't ever looked at the sky back at school. I hadn't looked at the sky for a long, long time. I must have fallen asleep because when I woke, a chill wind was blowing and I had goosebumps on my arms. Grandad had put away his fishing gear and started up the engine. "We better head back," said Grandad. "The wind's picked up. The tide has turned again and will help us in." "We haven't caught any fish," I said. Grandad smiled. "Maybe another day. It's not about the fish. I just like to get out on the water." I sat next to Grandad as the Neris Jane rose, dipped over the swell. When we reached the sandbar again, the waves were higher than before, and I could see some of them were breaking as they entered the estuary. "Hold on," said Grandad, "just in case. We have to choose a wave and follow close behind it on the way in. Just let me know if another wave behind is catching up." Grandad waited until he had chosen a wave to follow. Then he pushed the boat to full speed and we raced in just behind the wave. I looked back to see another wave chasing us in. It was bigger than our wave and it broke into surf. But Grandad kept ahead of it and steered us safely in. "Here," said Grandad when we were in calm water. "Why don't you take over now?" The estuary looked different. All the sandbanks were covered by the tide and the river was wide, reaching right across the marsh. The sun was lower in the sky and a few clouds were over the mountains. The breeze was colder than before. "A northerly wind?" said Grandad, nodding. "Are we going to the harbour?" I asked. Grandad looked up at the sky again. "No, let's go a bit further upriver. I think it will happen this evening." "What?" I said. Grandad turned to me and smiled. "The greatest show on earth."